Yesterday on the show, we told you about endangered whooping cranes who were found with avian influenza in Saskatchewan in recent months. And we also told you how you can help monarch butterflies in our province thrive. They're just two endangered species here in Saskatchewan. We want to learn more about others and why these at-risk species call Saskatchewan home. Ryan Fisher is the curator of vertebrate zoology at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, and he's an expert on wildlife here in the province. And Ryan has come into the studio before the wind blew him away. Ryan, thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much for having me.
So Ryan, tell me about some of Saskatchewan's most endangered species right now.
Yeah, so there's about 56 species in Saskatchewan.
List them all. No, I'm kidding.
I wish. That are threatened or endangered, so listed by the federal government. But that ranges from plants to insects to birds and mammals. So I'm a bird guy, so I can tell you a bit about some of the birds and mammals that are at risk. So there's a couple birds, one called Sprague's pipit, one's called thick-billed longspur, and they're native grassland specialists. So you only find them in the province where there's ranching, there's cows, and the grass hasn't really been disturbed by a plow. So they're at risk because they've kind of lost a lot of their habitat in the province. There's a couple species of bats, one called little brown bat, one called northern myotis, and they're influenced or impacted by a disease called white nose syndrome, so it affects their hibernation. So that's a species that's in trouble because of a disease. Then we have some other birds that are in trouble in the province that belong to a group called aerial insectivores. They eat insects while they're flying around, and because we've used insecticides, that insect food supply is kind of dwindling.
And so we've talked about, loss of habitat or disease. Is there a common thread through what is the reason why we have 56 on this list? And you mentioned not all of them are mammals or birds. What can you tell us about maybe a common thread through this? Yeah,
so for a lot of the species, the ways that people have impacted the areas that they live is one of the bigger threats for most of the species that we see here in Saskatchewan. But we do have some of the other critters there, like I talked about, that when we're using things like herbicides or pesticides, that can impact their food sources. And then we have some species that are impacted by disease. But sort of, what you mentioned, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We have them here in Saskatchewan, obviously, because we're doing something right for those endangered species. And so there is a bit of a silver lining there.
What are some, you mentioned that, you'd only see the bird species in long grass, in, ranch land. Is there a chance of you coming across some of these endangered species here in the city in a more, let's say, urban environment?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've been doing a project on urban wildlife the last couple of years, and we actually found this cool bird called a bobolink. It likes really, really tall grass, and it's sort of confined to areas around the Riverside Cemetery down in southern Regina, but it likes really tall grass, and that's provided in spades here in the city. And so it's really nice to see, part of a city providing habitat for at-risk species.
And there's efforts, I know, to get some of these species off endangered lists to bring their numbers up. How is that done?
Yeah, so it could be a combination of different things. There's a couple really good examples. So the whooping cranes you talked about, they were down to about 20 individuals several years ago. Scientists stepped in, government stepped in, started captive rearing them, releasing them into the wild sort of piece by piece. And I think now we're up to about 500 individuals. And so, again, a little bit of a silver lining that there are some pretty concrete actions that we can take to start reversing some of those declines.
For you at the museum and seeing and being able to deal with some of these species, what keeps you so excited about dealing with this?
Yeah, so I think it's interacting with people that are really really interested in doing things that can help these endangered species. So we work a lot with ranchers to work on those grassland species at risk. And just seeing all the efforts that are going on in the province to reverse some of those declines, it sort of keeps you going to the next day.
And what are some of the things that people can do to help out if they're concerned about anything that's endangered in this province?
Yeah, so I think doing your own part to keep natural areas natural, supporting organizations that keep those areas natural. We need to learn more about these critters, and so participating in citizen science to help us understand where these animals are in the province is really good. So there's a couple programs called iNaturalist and eBird where people can report endangered species sightings, and so all of those things are really, really important.
And Ryan, I can't have you in and not ask you about what you're working on at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. So what's on your agenda? What's been happening?
Yeah, so we've actually got a project that's just finishing up on a cool little critter called Ord's kangaroo rat. So it looks like a little gerbil almost.
These names, I'm telling you.
Exactly.
There's a quiz later.
That's right. So it essentially looks like a gerbil, and we find them on sand dunes in southwestern Saskatchewan. And unfortunately, those sand dunes are disappearing because of lack of grazing and a lack of fire disturbance. And these are areas that these kangaroo rats need. So we're out across southwestern Saskatchewan, southeastern Alberta, catching them, looking at their population genetics, and trying to understand a little bit about what we can do to manage those sand dune habitats.
Or say that Ord's kangaroo rat.
Ord's kangaroo rat. Yeah. So they look like a kangaroo because they have these big back legs and they hop around rather than walk.
Ryan, thanks so much for coming in and telling us more about what you're working on and also about the endangered species here in Saskatchewan. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.